I'm Vanessa Levin, and you're listening to Elevating Early Childhood. Do you struggle with circle time? It can be a real challenge to get young children to listen and pay attention during circle time. But what if I told you it doesn't have to be that way? What if there was a recipe for a successful circle time that you could follow? Wouldn't that be amazing? I know, it sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? That's why I invited a special guest to join us today on the podcast to talk all about circle time best practices and troubleshooting tips to make your circle time the very best it can be for both you and your students. This person is known for her highly effective circle time games, and she's a 4-time speaker at our annual Soar to Success Summit for early childhood educators. She's passionate about all things preschool, including emergent literacy, play-based learning, and process art. She loves creating delightful preschool experiences in her classroom. It's none other than my good friend, Jamie White, founder of the super popular website, Play to Learn Preschool. So Jamie, I am so excited that you're joining us here on the podcast today. I cannot wait to talk about this. This is one of my favorite topics.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
I feel like you and I could talk about circle time for like ever. Like this could just be like a never ending podcast.
For sure.
It's something we're both really passionate about, of course, early childhood in general, but circle time, that's something that I get a lot of questions about. Do you get questions about circle time too?
All the time. Yes. I think that's why we talk about it so much, right?
Right. Well, I'm glad that you're here and we're going to just talk all things circle time. Let's jump right in with the first question that I get so often, and I'm sure you do too. What if your kids are too wiggly to sit for circle time? What are your thoughts on that? If kids are too wiggly, what are your thoughts?
So I think that when kids behave in a certain way, it's their way of telling us, I need more movement, or what you're doing is not resonating with me, basically. And so I never see wiggling as a misbehavior. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're not doing it to annoy me. But if they're wiggling, it's like, oh, then I haven't planned enough movement activities into the circle time today. Or if they're not coming to circle time, I'm like, I haven't done a good enough job making this really fun and attractive to them. So I really try to just take my cues from the students. And I don't see wiggly kids as misbehaving, right? That's how they learn, is by moving their bodies.
And, little kids are wiggly by nature. So
Yes.
if we expect them not to be wiggly, we're expecting them not to behave like the little people that they are. I don't know any 3, 4, or 5-year-old that isn't wiggly.
I would be so worried to come into a circle time and have everybody sitting perfectly still. What have you done? This is not right. This is not how they behave. This is not natural, right? They need to move. And
so like when kids are wiggly, and of course I'm going to echo what you said, because we're always on such the same wavelength, but when they're wiggly, that just is something that's feedback that I'm getting about what I'm doing. And so I have to change what I'm doing. And part of being a really good teacher is doing that on the fly. So if I see my kids are wiggly, I have to react to that. And the way I react is by changing what I'm doing, right? So
exactly.
If they're wiggly, then I'm going to say, okay, what am I doing right now that I can change? So if I'm reading a story and they get wiggly, now I need to change what I'm doing. That doesn't mean drop the book on the floor and do a song, but I'm going to prompt some interaction from them, right?
Absolutely. I think it actually speaks to a common mistake that preschool teachers make with their circle time, and that is the length of time for circle time. I think sometimes we feel like if we don't tell them the information, they're not going to learn it. So we make our circle times really long. We have to go through the calendar. We have to go through the weather. I have to tell them the letter. I have to tell them the number. I have to tell them the color. And if I don't do those things, they won't learn it. And when we realize that that's not true, right? That they actually will learn better interacting with each other at invitations to play, at centers around the room, then we can relieve some of that time at circle time and make it more developmentally appropriate. Circle time can get to be like 10, 15, 20 minutes long if we're doing all the things. And as soon as we realize we do not have to do all the things for them to learn. In fact, it's the opposite. they learn better when we focus our circle time on a specific objective and let them learn the things while they're playing. Then they're not as wiggly, right? Because a lot of times that's just a sign, like I've been sitting here too long.
Right.
And that's a common mistake people make, is their circle times are too long for
Right.
little kids.
Also, that we have to remember as early childhood professionals that what our circle time looks like the beginning of the year is going to be completely different than what it looks like at the end of the year, because throughout the year we're stretching their little attention spans, right? As they mature, as they grow, then their skills also grow. Their attention spans get a little bit longer. They're able to sit for longer periods of time. And I'm not talking about, just sitting and listening and getting.
No, I understand, like staying on task for longer periods of time. Sure.
So,
as a rule of thumb, I like to plan for like 2 to 3 minutes per year of their age.
Yeah.
I've kind of always stuck to that. And the 2 minute is more on the beginning of the year side, and the 3 minute is more on the end. And of course, what happens is they get older, right? And we add that extra time. And so we might start with a 3-year-old. It might just be 6 minutes at the beginning of the year, 2 minutes per year of their age. But by the end of the year, they've turned 4, and I can extend it to more like 3 minutes per year of their age. So it's more like 12, even 15-minute circle times at the end of the year.
Yeah, I love that. And you mentioned something, and I think we should go down that avenue. And that is, this is a question I get a lot too, and I'm sure you do. If we're not doing the telling, if we're not doing the telling of the days of the week and the telling of the months and the telling of what, the number of the day and the color of the day, the number and the letter and all that stuff, if we're not doing that during circle time, then what do we do? I think we should jump down that rabbit hole, because I think that for anyone listening who is in that current situation going, maybe my circle time, I'm noticing they're wiggly. I'm noticing they're, my favorite is rolling around on the floor, touching their friends.
I always have a donkey kicker. Do you ever have a donkey kicker? Like where the kid, like all of a sudden their legs just have so much energy, they just reel up on their hands and kick back behind them.
My nephew was here last week, and he was doing a lot of donkey kicking. There was a lot of, watch me, look what I can do.
Oh, that's a great trick.
I was like, great, buddy.
And I think that's a really good question. And it's a question that I ask myself, not just at circle time, but everything in the room is, I always say, like, is this the best way for the students to learn this information? Or is this the best way for them to experience whatever it is I have for them to experience down here? And in circle time, I want those objectives to be very clear. So for me, I split my circle time component into 3 separate parts. So roughly like 10 minutes each, less at the beginning of the year, more at the end. But that first circle time, the morning meeting, my goal is very specific. I really just want to use it to build community, to make sure everybody feels welcome, to get a temperature check on everybody's emotions and their feelings, to make sure that everybody knows each other's names at the beginning of the year, and to make sure that they feel safe and welcome in the classroom. And that is my only goal. And so then when I ask myself, is the best way to reach that goal, to make sure that they feel safe and comfortable in the classroom, to make sure they feel like they have friends with their classmates, is the best way to talk about the weather? The answer is no, it's not. It's not, right? Like I wouldn't do that with my friends to check in on them. How are you feeling today? And also, would you like to notice the clouds? But, like you should wear a light jacket. It feels a little chilly. Like, no, right? So we want to do things that are meaningful to them to build community in that first morning meeting. I also use that one to pitch. I always say pitch an activity or pitch a center. So I feel myself like a salesperson, right? Like I'll bring a center or an art activity to that circle time, and I'll show them, I'll demonstrate how to do it or talk it up, especially if it's one that I notice that they're not visiting very much. And it's almost like a sales pitch. You should try this. And then they go and play. And all of that learning, like the letters, the numbers, the fine motor skills, the shapes, we can do that at the learning centers. They do not need to sit and hear me tell them, this is a circle. This is it. This is yellow. Today's letter is B. I mean, they're going to tune me out. And so that is not a good use of my time, not a good use of their time.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
I wish, this is my wish, if there was such a thing as wish in early childhood, and that is we could stop calling it circle time and call it morning meeting instead. I know that's a big trend right now, and a lot of people do that. But I think that when we use terms like circle time that have been around for so long and have such deep, entrenched beliefs and experiences around them, that then we continue on in that vein thinking, I know what circle time is. I have to do it this way. If we could get away from using that circle time and call it morning meeting, because morning meeting is really, I think, more descriptive and more
Yeah.
accurate description of what we're doing. My take is that we are setting kids up for success
Yes.
during that circle time / morning meeting. And the way we do that isn't by telling the color, number, letter, shape, looking at the weather, like you said, that's a good one. Um, or heaven forbid, the date, like looking at the actual, today is Monday, September 4th, 2000, whatever.
Yes.
And I think that if we instead set our kids up for success by reviewing the schedule, like not this, your picture schedule, right?
Hmm.
Your picture schedule, talking up, like you said, what we're
Yeah.
going to do today. And when you go to centers today, guess what? I have something new I want to show you. You're just going to
Yeah.
love it. I feel like I
Yeah.
used car salesmen a lot.
Oh, I know. That's what I like. And if you buy one, you get another one free. Kind of like after you do science, you should also do math. Or,
Right. But wait,
um,
there's more.
I know. Also, while you're over in that area of the room, you could check out the sensory table. So
Absolutely.
that's an interesting thought, Vanessa, that maybe because we've been using the term circle time since forever,
Right.
that everybody thinks circle time and they think that that just means calendar and weather and number of the day or whatever shape of the day. That's
Right.
an interesting thought. The other thing that I was thinking when you were talking about the calendar is that, at least for me personally, when I wake up in the morning and I'm trying to get together for my day, I do not look at my monthly calendar, right?
Right.
I look at my daily calendar. A lot of times I'm on like almost an hour by hour basis. Like, what do I have to do in the next hour? What? And so I feel like we need to remember that for our kids too, especially at the beginning of the year when they arrive in our classroom in the morning on the first day or on the first month, they're not wondering when is Halloween. They're wondering, when is my mom going to come pick me up? Right? How is this day going to go for me? And so if you're feeling like, oh, I can't drop calendar, maybe we just need to shift our mind thinking from calendar doesn't have to be the whole month. The calendar can be the schedule for the day. That's also a calendar, right? Just
Right.
change your tab from month to day and, go through, first we're going to do morning meeting and then we'll play and then we'll have a snack and we'll play outside, so that they can kind of see
Yeah.
that kind of calendar that's relevant and meaningful to them
Right.
so that, they get the information that they actually are interested in.
Yeah, because if you think about it, really the objective here that a lot of teachers are going for, that most states and other programs have in their standards or objectives, is understands the passage of time.
Mm.
And so we as adults interpret that to mean a calendar, days of the week, and so forth. But like you said, understanding the passage of time is really more about, now we're going to do this, then we're going to do that, and
Yes.
having those pictures to guide them through. And I
Yes.
think that is really what they mean by the passage of time. And of course, it's worded differently in every single
Of
state,
course.
just because they
I
can.
think in Virginia it says that they can measure the passage of time. I'm like, really? Who wrote this? That's a terrible way to just, it's not like to describe the passage of time or understand, order of events. It's like measure the passage, measure time.
And then
What?
my gut instinct, although I'm a professional educator like our listeners, is that, oh, I need to teach the clock.
Yeah, right. I know that's what it sounds like. They should all be wearing a watch or something.
Exactly. And that's where we get all this misunderstanding that comes into it. So I
Yeah.
think that when we understand and how children learn, and then we also
Mhm.
honor that by doing things in the way that they can, because little kids learn from from the concrete, to the abstract.
Yes.
And the idea of a calendar is a very abstract thing. I don't know
Very abstract.
any 3, 4, and 5-year-olds who have a daily planner, right? And if they do, I'm sure it's scribbled in. So,
I think this is another area where we have to take the cues from the kids, from
mhm,
the students, right? So if they start talking about something that's going to happen, not today, but in the future, like my birthday's coming up soon, or for me, it's always Halloween. As soon as they see a pumpkin anywhere, it's like, guess what today is? It's Halloween. And so maybe something more tangible for our preschoolers, like a countdown chain or some kind of like a mark where we would put, pumpkins to count up to this big event that they're counting some, time in the future. Because I know that your students are like mine, where they say it's going to happen tomorrow. And that
sure.
means any time in the future. And it happened yesterday. Like
Right.
I threw up yesterday, and I'm like, you threw up yesterday? And I messaged mom, and she's like, it was earlier in the summer. I'm like, okay, yesterday just means in the past.
Yeah. When my nephew was here, he kept saying, my birthday is tomorrow. It's October 4th.
Right. But that's in the future. So he's got tomorrow is a future time, and yesterday was a past time. So
Exactly.
yes, we can really get a lot of cues from them, right? That they're not ready to plan out a month, but we
Right.
could do something like add a ring or take off a ring to count down to an event. Um,
Yeah. I
yeah.
totally agree. And they're also egocentric little things, little beings, the children in our
Yes.
classrooms. And so when we look at it in that way of going from the concrete to the abstract, and then also looking at the schedule and how it relates to them, because our picture schedule in our classroom is so meaningful to them. They understand what snack is, they understand
Yes.
what recess is, they understand what going to centers or reading a story is. All of that is very meaningful to them.
Yep.
So, and they're egocentric, it's all about
Yep.
them. So when
Of
we're doing
course.
the picture
That's what I
schedule.
mean. They just want to know, when is my mom going to be here, right,
Yeah,
to pick me up. I'll
exactly.
have students that will refer to that, especially at the beginning of the year. They'll go and like look for the picture and then see what comes next. Especially my nervous Nellies, my little, kids who have the separation anxiety, because they want to see like how close are we to
Yeah.
the picture of their home.
Absolutely. And I think when we do these things, when we view circle time or morning meeting as a way to set the stage for success for our kids for the day, it's going to also set us up for success as teachers, because the day will go more smoothly. You know,
Yes.
when your kids know and understand what comes next or what's coming, and they can see it in that very simple picture schedule,
Yes.
whether you use real photographs or not, doesn't matter. It's just having it there for them
Yeah.
is going to go such a long way into creating a more, I think, a calm classroom. I'm not saying it's going to be like, pin drop. I'm just saying a little less stress, a little less
Sure.
anxiety could go a long way with little children.
When children are in a predictable routine, when they know what to expect, then that takes something off of their plate that they don't have to worry about. So their mind, you know what I mean, is like always saying, when is my mom coming? Or what's
Right.
coming next? If they can remove that worry, then they can focus and they will be more calm. For sure, the behavior problems go down when it's very predictable. There are no surprises. They know where to find the information that they need. Yes, for sure. I think it's important too to say, like, I call circle time. I mean, we do the morning meeting, but then I do a little mini lesson in the middle of the day, which I also call circle time,
Mhm.
where I have some kind of an activity, if it's a sorting activity or a poem or something that goes with whatever our unit of study is. And we also use that time to take the kids to the bathroom. And so we'll just do movement, songs or finger plays, something like that. And I call that circle time too. Anytime we're together as a whole group, and I have those objectives are very clear as well. So as long as we have the objective and we're not taking too long to just talk to them,
Right.
um, I
Yeah,
would call that circle time.
absolutely.
And I call story time circle time too. That's our third one, is when we sit down on the rug at the end of the day and I read them a book and we talk about comprehension or characters or whatever we're doing. I call that circle time too. So I maybe just use that as a blanket term, and we need three separate
Right.
words for it.
Yeah, I think that that's important to note. I like what you said about reading a book, because so many times we think of circle time again. It's the calendar with all those components we talked about. And then it's do me a song and then read a story. Now you're looking at like 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And guess what? Their attention was gone after what, minute 6. And so they're not going to
Mhm.
get a whole lot out of that story either. And I think
Yeah.
that's really the meat of what we're doing often in the classroom is that story time, because you learn so many things from that. So really thinking critically about, okay, what am I doing and when am I doing it? Like there's no rule that says you have to have just one circle time or morning meeting, right?
Right. And I think if we look at our entire schedule and try to alternate patterns of lots of activity and busy movement, where they're free to move, like outside at recess on the playground, they're using their gross motor skills. And then next comes sit and listen to the story. It goes like that for our whole day. So we start with the morning meeting and then they play, and then we ask them to sit for snack time, excuse me, and then they play, And then we ask them to sit for that, mid circle time, then we recess, and then they sit. So it's like alternating patterns of activity and calm will really help, because if you just have things like sit and listen to this, and then sit and have your snack, and then sit for the story, and then sit, they're like, I'm out.
Yeah.
Want to see my donkey kick?
Exactly. That's when it becomes that type of more like a circus rather than a
Yes.
circle time.
And then the teacher feels frustrated, right? And she feels like she needs to wrangle these behaviors, or, manage the behavior. And I need some kind of I'll get teachers who are like, I need a behavior modification tool for circle time. If it's a treat jar or a sticker chart or something, maybe what we need to do is just look at our schedules and say, how can we make this work better for what our children need?
Yeah, I totally agree. That brings us to another question that I get a lot is my kids either A, won't come to circle time, or B, they get up and wander.
Yeah.
What do you think about those two questions? I know I have my ideas. I'm pretty sure I know what you're going to say, but let's go there for a minute.
I have two thoughts on this, Vanessa. Let me know if we're on the same page. But my first thought is fine, as long as they're safe and you can still see them. If they wander off at the end, that's again them saying, this isn't meeting my needs, or I need to stretch, whatever it is they're saying. I need to stretch my legs or whatever. My second thought is the burden is really on the teacher then to make circle time so fun and so magnificent that they can't help but want to be over there. And that happens when we bring things to circle time for them to hold and touch and see and do. So if we're talking about fall and I've got a big picnic basket full of apples and pumpkins, and everybody gets to hold an acorn and a harvest corn and all these things they get to hold. Well, there's not going to be a kid standing in the other side of the room if I'm saying everybody can pick something out of the basket, right? They all want their hands in that basket. I feel the same way about my puppet. That they might be on the fringes of the circle time, maybe observing more than participating. As soon as I get my puppet out of this, this mailbox here, and she has a note for them or a sticker or whatever it is, everybody is over there. And so I just really think that, teaching is a lot like throwing a party, right? Like where you just have to just make it really fun and attractive for them so that they want to be there. Right. Because what doesn't work is to keep bringing the kid over and you keep talking about this is a circle,
right?
The circle is round. This is a yellow circle. Yellow is the color of a bus. We're talking about it in September because that's the first month. You know what I mean? Like this whole thing, they're going to keep wandering off. And so you can bring them back 100 times, but they're like, I'm out, right? This doesn't do anything for me. But as soon as we engage their senses, as soon as we incorporate a silly dance, a freeze dance or a funny move or a puppet or, materials that they can touch and use that they wouldn't have access to in other parts of the classroom, they're all in.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Dr. Jean said it best. She always says the teacher brings the magic.
Yeah, she does say that. Yes.
Yes.
And sometimes that's exhausting, right? You're like, could you all just sit and listen while I talk? But it doesn't work like that for 3 and 4-year-olds.
Yeah. And I think that, we all develop our own little bag of teacher tricks that we can pull from that really work for us and our kids or we're most comfortable with. And I think that we have to keep that in mind, that you can't just have one strategy. You have to have a bunch because you never know what kid you're going to have in your class and how that child's going to respond. Another thing that I think too is that we assume that when a child wanders out of the circle or morning meeting, that they're not listening. Mm. And I think that sometimes, in my experience, it's that they're still listening. They just couldn't sit still. I mean, if you know people who like to play with a pen or fidget during, staff meetings or whatever, those are the people who maybe as kids might have been circle time wanderers.
Sure.
And I think that it's important for us to keep in mind that just because they got up doesn't mean that they're not listening. It doesn't mean that you're not doing your job either. I think the minute teachers experience that feeling of a kid who has wandered away or won't come feels like a failure. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can understand that. And And I agree with you. Like watching from a distance is still participating. Listening while you're doing something else is still participating. There are other ways to participate other than sit with their eyes glued to the teacher. So I agree with you. And I think teachers can be so hard on themselves, right? Because you can have the best lesson plan. Like I've had lesson plans where I'm planning it or putting it together and I'm like, this is going to be amazing. They're going to love it. And about 2 or 3 minutes in, I'm like, they don't love it. Do you know what I mean? Like every once in a while, there's something where I'm like, I really thought they'd be into this. And the mark of a good teacher is not that every lesson hits the mark. You know what I mean? That every lesson is a winner. Really, it's that every time a child gives you information that you take it and change based on that feedback from the kids, right? So if one kid wanders, I usually don't make a big deal. If lots of kids are wandering,
Right.
and I keep going with my amazing lesson, like this is the greatest lesson ever, right? And kids are wandering off and I keep going with it. That's not a great teacher, even if it's a great lesson. The great teacher is the one who can stop and say,
Right.
all right, I had this thing, but obviously it's not working. So I need to take my cues from the kids. They're telling me we're
Right.
done.
Right.
This didn't resonate with us or whatever that you put out something better at or at centers. Do you know what I mean? Then you did it circle time. So we're out of here.
Right.
But a good teacher is the one who can adapt.
I think that the bottom line here is that teaching is hard.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Teaching is really hard. You have to walk this fine line. Is it too fun? Is it too many transitions, too much this, too much that, or not enough this, not enough that? It's kind of like being a chef, right? You have to have the right ingredients and add spices and all that stuff to make
And as soon as you get it right, you have different customers.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
I feel like as soon as you figure it out, like the cadence of your day and the right amount of crazy with calm, and as soon as you figure that out, you get new students in there and they need something different.
Right.
So teaching is very challenging. I completely agree.
Yes. And I think that's what we highlighted here. But one last point I want to touch on before we go is quite often teachers ask me, how do I get them to listen to the story? Like they did pretty well for the other parts, but when it comes to the story, they just start losing it. And my first reaction is, well, move the story up into whatever it is you're doing to the part where their attention is still fresh. But also looking at the type of books we choose, I think that is also another like fine art thing. Like you have to be really skilled at either A, knowing your students, and B, picking the just right books for the time of the year. I see a lot of teachers are like, well, I have all these books. I'm so excited to read them. Oh, they didn't listen to them. So what did that tell you? That's my thing. What do you think?
Yes, I agree with you. And I would say the same. So what did you learn from trying to read The Kissing Hand on the first day with a group of 3-year-olds? How did that go for you? Tell me more.
Right.
I think that it is such an important thing to be able to pick out the right books. And when you realize like the type of book that's right, it makes it easier. For me and for my students, it's always, especially at the beginning, there's something with a song or movement. They love Pete the Cat and Groovy Joe and the Nuts, all those Eric Littman, like they love the ones that I have a song to go with it on my phone. We can listen to it and sing and dance. They love things that require movement, thinking specifically like Eric Carle's From Head to Toe, right? Like I'm a penguin and I turn my head, and I might just read that on the first day of school. It doesn't have anything to do with apples. It doesn't have anything to do with the first day of school. But if my goal is to teach them to come to the circle and participate with me while I read them a book, that's a really good choice.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
So to kind of let go of that thematic, seasonally perfect first day of school thing that'll give you all the feels, and go with something that's going to be really effective in meeting the goals of getting them to come and listen.
I think that a lot of times we as teachers get stuck on the whole, well, it's Apple week, so I have to read Apple books. Yeah. And I think that that's the furthest thing from the truth. We have to read the books that are just right for the kids that are in front of us. And if that means we have interactive books that might not be anything to do with apples, then so be it, as long as we've got their attention and we're still able to accomplish the goals and objectives of our whatever it is, our program or state or whatever, that doesn't really, honestly, I don't think any state objectives say they must learn about apples.
Are you sure? Because it sure seems like everyone thinks that's true. The apple books the first week of school are especially terrible because I just don't think the kids care about apples the first week of school. They don't, especially kids who've not been in school, which I think is most of our kids right now. They have not been in school for 18 months or so. The apples are not going to win them over the first week of school. But I always have kids who their parents will message me after a day or two and be like, I don't know what you're doing in your classroom, but all afternoon I'm singing polka dot pants. Can you tell me what this polka dot pants thing is? And I'm like, oh, it's a book we read. And that tells me they're going home. And, like they have it stuck in their head. I'm singing and dancing my polka dot pants or whatever Eric Litwin, cute thing he's written. And that tells me that they are happy about the day that they had, that their parents can see they came home happy, they came home singing, and that they want to come back the next day because they remember that it's fun. And I have yet to come across an apple book that you get stuck in your head and that, right? And that you think, I can't wait to go to school tomorrow to read another apple book.
Right.
As much as a book that will really get their attention and make them happy about being in the classroom.
Maybe we should petition Eric Litwin to write an apple book.
No, please. I'm not a huge fan of the Apple unit, just in general. I don't know.
They're just not motivating, They're just not motivating for little kids. Think about it. Fruits and vegetables, the last thing on their list that they want to eat. Maybe a unit about corn dogs and pizza. I don't know.
This month we're learning all about chicken nuggets, friends. Oh, that's too funny. We always write on our own lesson plans for my classroom. We always write a unit for the first month of school. But the truth is, the first month of school, the unit is learning how to come to school, being happy at school, and making friends. We put it in like a unit, like all about school or all about me. Right. But the truth is that there's not a lot of direct teaching like there would be in a dinosaur unit or, a farm unit that first month of school. They just need to figure out how to do it, how to be happy, get used to the routine. Yeah. Giving myself a pep talk.
I think we have a good episode here filled with some of the best tips and tricks about circle time / morning meeting, whatever you decide to call it.
Yes.
I hope that our audience can take away some gold nuggets from this episode. Well, I want to thank everyone for tuning in today and listening or watching, depending on how you choose to consume this podcast. So thanks again. I'm Vanessa Levin, and this is Jamie White. Thanks again, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Vanessa. Bye-bye.